12 terabytes of emulation action. So yes, coming from KinHank, interesting name, this is an all-in-one solution to all your gaming needs ever, so they say. This is a 12 terabyte unit, jam-packed with more ROMs than you can shake a stick at. And we're talking full-on PC games as well. Now, actually, what we get is this box here, which is a hard drive enclosure, which we'll take a look at in more detail in a moment. But also in the pack comes this GameSir controller, which is pretty decent. So first of all, let's take a look at the GameSir controller. As you can see on the back, it's a standard modern day dual analog with a D-pad style controller. So let's open it up and see what it's like inside. Now, while I haven't used this particular controller, I have used one like it in the past, and it was fairly decent. GameSir seems to be pretty reliable and a pretty decent controller manufacturer these days. So here's the actual controller. It feels a little bit light, but not too light. As you can see, it is not flexing, it is not creaking, it's a solid controller. It's got a typical PlayStation style D-pad on it. Personally, I think they're bloody awful because I don't like the PlayStation D-pads, but most modern gamers seem to like these things, and the typical PlayStation style analog sticks as well. And buttons all feel reasonably fine. Okay, and here is the actual device that came in the box. This is the hard drive enclosure, which is by a company known as Ugreen. Now, I know what you're thinking, it's an Aliexpress unit, it's not really going to be a 12 terabyte hard drive, is it? Because 12 terabytes is a lot of space. Well, let me tell you, this actually is a 12 terabyte hard drive. Look at that. It's a Western Digital 12 terabyte hard drive at that. And I have already been using this for the last couple of weeks, and I can verify it is actually 12 terabytes, and it weighs quite a bit. The enclosure itself is pretty standard. It does have a nice little message on the back here, which says, "Protect what you love." Okay, very nice. On the back of the enclosure, we have the power input, USB 3 input there, and the power button. Yet you do have to press the power button to make this function, even though it might be plugged in. Now, it's not exactly plug and play as we would hope. Along with the hard drive, we get this manual here. And this user manual does tell you to install various types of software. Now, on the official shop, it does mention that you should not be afraid. There are no hidden viruses or anything like that. And to be honest, I kind of do believe them. I went through the entire contents of this hard drive, and there was no hidden viruses on there. Everything checked out to be perfectly fine. Now, I didn't actually go and install all the drivers though, since my PC already had a lot of the drivers, but you do have to install the actual software. So basically what you get built into this hard drive is a version of RetroBat, Launchbox and Hyperspin, as well as Kodi and a few other things. And then you have this main program which controls all the other programs. Let's connect up to a PC and show you more about it. So we're going to be using my very modest emulation PC, which is kind of fitting because this is a hard drive full of emulation games. Okay, so it is a Windows 7 machine, 64-bit of course, with 8 gigs of memory, and an iCore CPU running at 3.47 to 3.60 gigahertz. Now, this device also does have an NVIDIA graphics card in it, and as you can clearly see, it's definitely not a powerhouse of a graphics card, is it? It's an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 750 Ti. But at least all the drivers are up to date. So as mentioned earlier, the first thing you have to do is install all the software, which is very, very straightforward. So We have this one here, which is Play Night Installer, and this is for your PC games. Basically, this is kind of like, think of it like a front end, right? So it's going to be like your GOG front end or your Steam front end, and basically what it does is it controls all the PC games on your machine and puts them into, you know, one nice front end where you can just select your games from. Okay. Now on this PC, this software doesn't work because it's not compatible with Windows 7. So we'll forget about that. Now RetroBat does work, so we will install that, but I'm not going to install Kodi since this PC already has a media system set up on it, so I don't want to mess around with Kodi on this machine. Launchbox and so on we will set up as well. Now once you've got all the main software packages installed, you go to the core exe file, and that is the software that you use to control all the other programs you've just installed, such as Launchbox and RetroBat and the Play Night software and whatever, and Kodi. It all gets controlled from this core software here. Now if you try and open up the other software on its own, it will work, but most of the games will not be present because it doesn't find them, it doesn't know where to look. But when you open it up with the core program, everything is there, it knows where to go. Okay, so first off, here we are in RetroBat, and we're going to take a look at some Hikaru emulation. Now Hikaru is a Sega arcade board, in case you didn't know, and the emulation on this actual arcade board is not very good. So any weird untextured polygons you see or glitches is not because of the actual hard drive, it's because the emulator is not very good. And that is also not a fault of the emulator they put on here. It's just like that. Basically the emulator is not complete. Now unfortunately, the Hikaru emulation is stretched to widescreen. However, we can go into RetroBat and actually change the default from automatic to 4:3. Good stuff. And then it should look something like this. Yeah, that's much better, isn't it? And as you can see, my modest PC is running that game pretty well. Alright. Let's check out some 3DO emulation. Now here's a game I've always wanted to check out on a 3DO. This is Killing Time. Probably one of the best looking first person shooters on the 3DO. And yeah, the frame rate is not the best, and again, that is not the emulation. This is what the game runs like on a real 3DO. Yeah, but it's working really well. It's working as it should. This is what it looks like on a real machine. Now, for those of you who are not too keen on the borders and the kind of TV bezel that we've got going on here, they can be switched off in the options of RetroBat, so don't worry about that. And let's check out a bit of Jaguar with Bubsy Bobcat. Yeah, this is why you bought a Jaguar, isn't it? To play a Super Nintendo or Mega Drive level game. Alright, maybe not. Let's bump it up a little bit with some 3D action on the Jag with Fight for Life. Yeah, that is pretty pathetic, isn't it? Alright, yeah, let's get rid of that crap. And let's see if 32X emulation on here is working well. I would imagine it is. And we'll go with Virtua Fighter. And as you can see, that is pretty good stuff. No problems whatsoever. How about Sega Saturn emulation? That's on here as well. How good is that?
Fight! One! Ready! Go!
Well, it kind of looks okay, but it certainly isn't running at the full speed, and yeah, that is a little bit janky. Now, you may be thinking maybe that's because this PC isn't powerful enough to run this emulator. Well, let me show you with a pretty old version of Saturn, which I've got on the hard drive here. Let me show you Virtua Fighter 2 running via that.
Fight! One! Ready! Go!
That is much smoother, a proper 60 frames per second. No problems whatsoever. So yeah, it seems that the Sega Saturn emulator that they have stuck onto this package is certainly not the best, and the one I'm using here is not new by any means. It's quite old. Okay, next, let's take a look at some Sharp X68000. Now, normally, Sharp X68000 stuff on these type of emulation packages never works because they just don't know how to configure the things. So, let's give it a try with Super Street Fighter 2. Yeah, let's try that. And now, I expect it just to boot to a black screen, but we'll find out. And yeah, it's not gonna boot. Yeah, and that's because it's not configured properly, so you're gonna have to go into the settings and configure everything yourself. Let's just try it with one other game. Maybe there's something wrong with that game. Let's try it with Strider. And yeah, we get the same results. It's just not gonna load. But that is pretty typical with X68000 on these types of packages. How about Wii U games which use the touchscreen? How is that going to work? Well, let's take a look at Kirby here. And as you can see, we can actually use the mouse cursor to manipulate the screen as if you were using the touchscreen on the Wii U pad. So yeah, you can play Wii U games, even those that require touchscreen, no problems in this package. And as you can see, this is running perfectly fine. Okay, next up we'll take a look at Launchbox and see what we've got on here. So first thing I want to do is try a PlayStation 3 game. Now with PlayStation 3 emulation it needs to compile all the shaders and so on, and this takes quite some time. But once it's done, the PlayStation 3 games will play. Alright, maybe not too good on this PC. Yeah, they are quite janky on this PC, and that's to be expected because this is not a very powerful PC. But if you've got a pretty decent PC with some nice graphics card in there, you're going to be able to play your PlayStation 3 games without any issues. So yeah, that is not a fault of the package itself. That's a fault of my PC. That's why it's looking a little bit janky. So let's boot up Hyperspin and let's see what type of results we get with this. So as you can see, it takes a little bit of time to boot up Hyperspin here. Now one thing I like about this setup here is they have everything put into various categories. So you've got like a certain group of games that belong to one arcade board, or you got a certain load of games that belong to one franchise. So you got all the Golden Axe games, for example. Or maybe you've got all the games that run on the Taito X board or something like that. So it's quite nice the way they're all categorized. And as you can see, the menu system here is working really, really well. No delays or stuttering whatsoever. So let's try and run this Namco System 22 game and see what happens. Oh, great. Crashed. Maybe that's an issue with the PC. I'm not so sure about that one. Now you may be wondering, does this really have so many games on it? Well, let's take a look here. I'm just counting up the ROMs. All the ROMs are stored in the Retro Bat folder for some reason. And look, we're already up to like 2 terabytes, going to 3 terabytes here. And it's counting away. It's not even near a fraction complete. Yeah, this really does have pretty much up to 10 terabytes of games on it. I mean, in the PC folder, you got things like Cyberpunk, all the latest games. You've got Battlefield 5's in there. Maybe that's not so new. You got all the GTA games, and it's got quite a lot of good stuff on here. To give you a rough idea of how many games have jam-packed into each system here, let's start off taking a look at the Amiga 500 set of ROMs. As you can see, each game is in its own zip file, and there are 1,798 zip files, so yeah, that's a lot of games. Alright, we'll take a look into the Amiga 4000 folder. Empty, nothing in there. Amiga CD32, how many files in there? There you go, 164 Amiga CD32 games. Amiga CD TV, 32 games. 3DO, what have we got in there? Okay, in the Japanese section we've got 43 games, and in the US section we have 175 games. That's a lot of data, because they are CD games, remember. Alright, let's take a look at something else. How about the FM Towns folder? Nothing, that's a shame. What have we got in the FM7 folder? Nothing again. Again, a big shame. Game Boy Advance, how many ROMs have we got? 1,132. That's a lot. Okay, well, let's take a look in the Sega Saturn folder. How many Sega Saturn games do we have on this hard drive? Well, let's take a look. We got 306. There's actually over 1,000 games released in Japan for the Sega Saturn, so that's nowhere near a complete set. PlayStation, what have we got in there? 1,804 games. That is a lot of games there for your PlayStation. Yeah. PlayStation 2. Okay, in the Europe folder we've only got 2 titles, and in the US folder we have 639 titles. So yeah, I'm sure you can see there's a lot of stuff on this device. So there you have it. That is the 12TB Super Game hard drive from KinHank. Now I'll put a link in the video description down below to the AliExpress store, the official store. Currently this 12TB version with the controller that I showed you earlier is selling for just under $200. Now considering you're getting a pretty decent SATA enclosure here, and a 12TB hard drive, plus it does have all those ROMs on, so you're going to save yourself a lot of searching on the net. I mean, let's throw away models here because we're not even going to go into the legality of this device. But yeah, that's for another discussion. But the price, considering what you get, not too bad. Is it for me? Well, I already have an emulation machine, but I will be keeping hold of this simply because it has a lot on it. So I'll be using a lot of the ROMs on here on my other emulators. I'm not really one for these front ends and so on, because I don't really use the machine in that type of style. But if you just want a very easy, quick solution to a massive emulation gaming setup, you could do a bit worse than this. Link in the video description down below, check it out, and I'll see you next time, guys. See ya!